Hey, we're really excited for this week's episode. We've got some great entrepreneurs, Caleb and Tanner from Baywatch. Not the Baywatch you're thinking, but it's the Baywatch Technologies company. And some of the things we learned, Jake and I, was how to really test your product and look at product market fit before you even take the concept to market. You're really good at that, wouldn't you say, Jake?
Yeah, they struggled. Their first iteration when they were in school, they didn't do any validation. So they got way far down the road before they realized that their product wasn't going to work. And so Baywatch Technologies is actually version 2.0, and it was born because of that, the fact that they didn't validate their product to begin.
And they talked to probably 14 to 20 customers before they even launched, which I think is a great model for any company that's just starting out.
Yeah, validate.
Validate, make sure that it's a thing before you launch. So that's our takeaway for this week. We're super excited to share this episode with you. Join us at the Midnight Founders Podcast. Here we go. Let's go.
How are you guys doing?
Oh, we're great.
Great. Happy to be here.
Baywatch, not the Baywatch you're thinking, though. This is Baywatch Technologies.
I mean,
right?
It could be the Baywatch you're thinking.
We should have worn our swimsuits.
Yeah. It's a sunny day. There we go.
I started my David Hasselhoff slow
Well,
run.
we've joked, like, if we weren't going to get, I don't know, like, sued for copyright infringement, we'd like send red swimsuits to like as like a little sales thing to all of our potential customers.
I think you just show up with your demos and swimsuit.
Yeah. Well, I walk in the
Why
dealership.
not?
I'm like, I'm here for the calendar shoot. You know.
Yeah.
It's great because that's
it's an icebreaker. So
the customers that we sell to like grew up watching Baywatch, right? Like that's the generation. Like a lot of people in automotive are kind of that age and demographic, and so we walk in with that name and like they.
Is it an instant like bond? Like, oh wait, you guys know?
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that? Okay.
Where's Pamela? You don't look like Hasselhoff. You know?
Yeah, that's great.
Cool.
So, how'd you guys get started? How did you meet each other? Is this like how did you get started in entrepreneurship? What's the history of this?
So Tanner and I have been best friends since we were 3, actually. So it's kind of been a really long time coming, I guess. So,
And the cool thing is you're still friends.
We're still friends, yeah.
It's amazing.
And that's like
which
what's really
doesn't always
interesting.
happen, so.
No, yeah. So Tanner and I I think my mom and his dad went to high school together, but they weren't really in the same group. And then we were just like a few houses down from each other when we were both 3.
Yep.
So Tanner and I kind of like from ever since then, we've just been best friends. Despite the fact that like I've moved across the country and Tanner's moved around Utah quite a bit. Obviously, both serve church missions and like we're outside of the country, and then we came back. And Tanner and I started doing door-to-door sales when I was in high school. Actually, my parents like shipped me off like the summer between my
one of those.
junior and senior year, and just said,
They
"Go
were sick
for
of
it."
Yeah, get you out of the house.
So
Go make something of yourself.
Exactly.
Kind of thing, right?
So I did that in high school. I did it. Right before I left on my church mission, and then I came back, and Tanner came back shortly after, and I was like, "Hey, man, it's a great way to like pay for school. Do you want to come work with me?" And so that's like the unique thing, because a lot of like friendships aren't necessarily really good working relationships, and Tanner and I have kind of been unique in that prior to Baywatch, we had worked at 2 companies like together. Like extensively, not just in passing, but like every day working with each other. And so that's kind of where the personal relationship kind of took like a business turn, which I think has been for the better, right?
Yeah, and we were both in positions that were like high-level sales management, and so it was like really stressful.
Oh,
we were
yeah.
always like, "Oh man, we wanted to kind of do our own thing eventually." We were like, "Oh, we kind of figured out how to do this sales thing and get other people to sell for us and succeed." But we're like, well, it'd be great if we could create our own product, to sell and be the owners of that.
Yeah, the thing about like people who do sales, especially like direct sales, at least in my experience, is like obviously they tend to think they're the brightest in the room and they can kind of do anything. Like that's just, I think, the kind of like attitude you almost have to succeed in that world for like an extended period of time. And I won't speak for Tanner because Tanner has his own unique selling style that's like very different from mine and honestly a lot better. But that's kind of how I, survived in the sales world, as I, kind of thought I was an alpha in the sales world and worked my way up to being a VP of sales I had about 300 reps across the country that I was in charge of. And Tanner was my right-hand guy who managed, I think, 3 of those teams. So how many reps was that probably?
Probably like 60 or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, like just all of his teams were always the best, like in terms of results. Like his teams were always at the top of the company. And so, but like Tanner mentioned, like something that's also really frustrating is because you have to almost trick yourself into that like alpha mentality to succeed in sales a lot of the time, or at least I thought so. And again, I think you'll find Tanner's the exception to that. But for me anyways, I thought like I should just go do this myself because I was really frustrated by the way I saw like the rest of the company being run and how it was impacting me, and even more so how it was impacting my reps, right? Like we saw how, because the company wasn't, we liked everyone at the company, but the company was having some issues with that scale, and I just didn't feel like they were focusing in the right areas, and it was leading to like hurting my reps' pocketbooks in terms of like what success they were able to achieve. Because things just weren't where they needed to be because of that rapid scaling. And so I was like kind of becoming a little bit disenchanted with working for a company, and I decided I wanted to go do my own thing. And the funny thing though is my wife is like the complete opposite in me in that she's very risk adverse. She's a CPA, if that kind of can show the difference between she and I. And so I had always told her that I was going to start a company one day, but I had promised her it was going to be after I achieved some level of success professionally and had like enough of a nest egg that it wasn't going to be a big deal. And so I transferred schools to BYU to join their finance program, and I was convinced the next step for me going from the sales role was to go be an investment banker and or get into consulting and just kind of that like really breakneck pace and environment. That's what I decided I wanted to do. And so I got into all of my finance classes, and I'll never forget, I'm like sitting in like the very last day right before finals of that first semester of the finance core at BYU. And my professor like got up there and he's just like, honestly, guys, don't try to beat the market. It's never going to work. Just invest in index funds. And like, I guarantee you'll make more money than all the guys on Wall Street trying to beat the market. And it was like totally deflating for me. Like I was like, he had like told this like crazy story, like, multiple stories throughout the semester where he had talked about like the success that he had. And I was like, I want to have that success. And then at the very end, he's just like, oh, don't even try. Right. And
it's almost like saying, hey, everything I've told you has been a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of how you felt. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was funny because that same week I needed to fill my schedule. So I'd signed up for like a executive lecture series where they'd bring in various executives or entrepreneurs to just talk about their experiences. And Eric Ray from Podium had come like that week. And this was
He's
like
awesome.
pretty early in like the Podium years.
Yeah,
like I think
they
they
weren't
just barely
that big.
closed their A maybe at the time, or maybe it was like a year after their seed, or like right before they raised their A. So it was still fairly young as a company. And I've only talked to Eric a couple of times, including like that day. I doubt Eric would remember me, which is totally fine. But like what Eric said during that lecture series, like made like a huge impact on like my career professionally, because he's like, look guys, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And a lot of people say that and they seem like they're the smartest people ever. And don't get me wrong, like Eric is brilliant, and he's so good at connecting with people and understanding and being able to like bring groups of people together. But Eric also like seemed very like approachable, whereas a lot of the other like executives that had come through had like engineering backgrounds or like computer science backgrounds or what have you. Whereas Eric, I saw more of myself in Eric, which is like totally, I probably shouldn't say that because Eric has achieved more and will probably continue to achieve more than I will. But the important thing is he did inspire me, which is what I think he was trying to do. And so I called Tanner right after that class. And this was, again, the same week that I had that experience with the finance professor. And I was just like, hey, man, like, we should just go start a company.
Eric can do it. We can do it.
If Eric can do it, we can do it. And like, of course, Tanner was at UVU, so Tanner didn't hear Eric speak.
Yeah.
But because Tanner and I had been best friends for so long, he was like the first person I thought of calling to do this. And so What kind of went through your head when I called you? I call Tanner with crazy ideas all the time, so I'm like really interested to hear.
Yeah. Well, I just thought, okay, well, what are we gonna do, right? Like,
Minor detail,
it
right?
sounds,
Let's do
sounds
something.
good,
What is it?
but I mean, we're getting a paycheck right now, and we have no idea what we're gonna go build. But Caleb did ignite that, first flame that eventually led to Baywatch.
Yeah.
So do you think, Tanner, do you have that same kind of entrepreneurial spirit that Caleb has?
I do, but a lot more,
It's tempered,
conservative,
maybe?
a little bit more timid, and Caleb's a little bit more of that gunslinger out there, like, oh, we could try this, and I'm like, oh, have we thought of that? Have we thought of this?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'll have ideas like that, and he'll play the devil's advocate to him, but we just have a great working relationship in that way, and I think it really, for me, it was scary leaving that salaried job. And going off into the unknown. But
Oh yeah, it was really scary because I left like 8 months earlier and hadn't had a paycheck in that entire time. And I'm like, hey, come do this.
in hindsight, Caleb might have left a little bit too soon, but it all worked out. And so
Put the pressure on, right?
he put the pressure on and got the urgency going. And then eventually I jumped ship as well. And we were both trying to build the boat while we were out there.
Yeah.
So,
Caleb's out there swimming. Hey, it's nice. It's nice out here.
Come on in, the water's
Sharks are
fine,
circling,
right?
it's fine. Yeah.
We've all had those friends.
yeah.
Everyone's
Yeah,
gotta have a friend like that.
I'm that friend for Tanner.
Yeah.
So tell us what is, and I think Jake and I have an understanding what Baywatch is, but I mean, for the audience, what is Baywatch? What do you guys do?
Yeah, go ahead, Tanner. Take it away.
So Baywatch, it's not high-tech swimwear, like we like to pitch to get in the door. Get
Or
some,
photo
get
shoots
some
on the
giggles,
beach or anything.
photo shoots.
Okay.
It's
We could do that though.
we could.
The price is right.
So it's a camera system and integrated software solution for the automotive industry to record vehicles and document the exterior condition of the vehicle throughout its lifetime. Specifically, what we majorly sell to new car dealerships, franchises, Ford, Toyota, Mercedes, and they install our system where customers drive in for service. And so when cars pull through, it records all the vehicle automatically. And then the dealership can pull it up with the license plate, zoom in, and see any pre-existing damage that was there. Because a lot of times customers will either be mistaken or try to take advantage of the business. And they'll, after an oil change, they'll walk around to the passenger side and say, hey, this scratch, was it here or was it not? And the dealership had some tools, of pen and paper to try to, cover their butts, but a lot of times that just failed. And so we created an automated system that does it all. They never have to worry, and they always know that scratch was or was not there.
I've always had those. I've heard horror stories about like rental cars.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm the guy that's got like 600 pictures of
yeah.
every rental car I've ever rented on my phone.
Imagine the frustration. Like we started this company 5 years ago, and like rental cars, like there's really 4 major companies in rental car, and they're huge. And so we've been trying to break into that rental car game for a while. And so every time Tanner and I travel and we get a rental car, imagine our frustration knowing we have a system that like would make this like so much easier. And like just the bureaucracy of like not being able to make it happen. So that most of our customers at this point are car dealerships. And like Tanner mentioned, primarily like we kind of built the system to protect the dealership, but we also wanted to protect the consumer, because there are certainly times where a car dealership can damage a vehicle. And we wanted to make sure that the right party was held responsible for the damage, no matter who that was. And so it was kind of interesting how we discovered the idea. Originally, Tanner and I were working on like a completely different idea, but still in the automotive space. And so we had kind of like gotten really excited about this other idea, and like we like had like formed an entity and like done some legal work and then like built a website, all before like validating like really anything. We thought it was the greatest idea. It was like, of course everyone was gonna like it. And so as we started to like go to like our soft launch, it was a marketplace between like independent repair shops and the consumer. And so the consumer side of the business, we did a lot of like surveying there and really great feedback. And that's why we thought we were like sitting on a gold mine. But like we totally neglected to like talk to a single independent repair shop at all until like the week before we were going to like push our product live. And so we went to go talk to some of those independent repair shops, and they like all completely were like, yeah, we're not interested in that at all. Like we don't want that as part of our business. Not a good fit for us. And Tanner and I were like pretty deflated, right? Like we like that idea had gotten us into BYU has like a summer launch pads for like companies for students that are going there. And it's like a program over the whole summer. They give you office space. You have like weekly check-ins and resources. And then, so we, just on that idea, we'd gotten into that launch pad. And so we'd spent the whole summer building this, again, not validating like what was arguably the most critical part because we thought it was a no-brainer. And then like at the very end of the summer, it was like July. So almost 5 years ago, exactly is like when we were getting ready and we went to go talk to our independent repair shops who we were sure were just going to sign up in droves, and found out that they weren't interested at all. And so Tanner and I like went back to our little office at BYU, like completely demoralized. Like, now what?
Yeah. And on the whiteboard, we were like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? And we're like, well, if the independent mechanic shops, sometimes they're not making as much money as these bigger car dealerships. And so we're like, well, more money, more problems, right? Maybe they have more problems. And so that got us in the door at a bunch of new car dealerships, asking questions of, what's the worst part about your job?
Yeah. And we decided to stop looking for a problem to fit the solution we'd already envisioned. We're like, let's just go hear what problems they have.
Yeah. Which is a great learning to come across because, I can't tell you the number of pitches that I've sat through where they have a great solution, but where's the problem?
Right.
So they're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Oh, yeah.
You need to focus on that product market fit first, which sounds like you guys found out the hard way.
Yeah. Well, I think it's still something we're still like, as we figure out like what's, our second product we're going to add, what's our third product going to be. Like, I think Tanner and I are having to like remember like, hey, let's go find problems and not just like try to fit the solutions that we've kind of imagined over the last couple of years as we've built the core business. Like, let's make sure that there's actually something there before.
Well, and the other smart thing you did too on that second go round is you went and asked the market and talked to potential customers. Hey, what is your problem?
Yep.
Where, again, so many companies forget to talk to who they're going to be selling to, which is a big piece.
Yeah.
Super important.
Super important.
Yeah.
Oh, we agree. And we didn't have a solution and try to like force it in. We go with an open notebook and just start taking notes, and then solutions start coming.
Yeah,
agenda, just listening.
Yeah,
exactly. We went to like 15 dealerships, and like we followed everyone around. Like, we followed the receptionists, we followed the porters, the technicians, the service managers, the advisors.
It was easy at the time because we could say, "Oh, it's a school project."
Yeah. Oh my
gosh. Imagine they're like, "What is this shadow here? Get away from me!"
Like,
what's going on?
You'd be surprised what you can get away with just saying you're a student. Like, that's probably been the biggest like eye-opening experience. Like, if you say you're a student, like they'll let you anywhere.
That's the tip of the day right there. Say you're a student, you get whatever you want.
You're a student of life,
Call
right?
on the phone. Hey, I'm a student asking some questions. They'll give you time.
Yeah, it's like everyone wants to help the kid out, I guess.
Yep.
So so we were out. I remember like exactly what happened. It was like the very beginning of August, or was it the end of July? It was one of the two. Like that weird, awkward week in between, and we went to a Ford dealership just up the freeway here. And we had, spent the day, a few hours with each of the various, employee roles. And we were with the service manager. And one of the advisors came back and had said something along the lines of like, "Oh, we have another one." And like that, kind of with this exasperated look on their face. And of course, that's when Tanner and I perk up. We're like, "Oh, another one," and he's exasperated. Like, that's gonna be good, right?
It's off.
Yeah, and that's when the service manager, who knew obviously why we were there, we had said we're students looking for problems, and for a project we're working on. He's like, "This is what you guys need to build," and then he's just like, "I'm sick of having people come and like pick their vehicle up from an oil change and then saying we damaged their car." And he's like, "There's no way we damaged their car because all we did was drive it into an oil bay, change the oil, and then put it in the parking lot. Like, there's like no way we could have done this curb rash. I don't even have curbs on my like property. Like, where would this have been curb rashed? Like, there's no curb anywhere, right?" And he's like, "But it doesn't matter because if I tell them off, they're just going to blow me up on social media and then or give me a bad CSI score, and that's going to hurt worse. So I just pay for it. It's just like I just wish that I could just record every vehicle when it comes in. And Tanner and I, again, we come from the sales side, so like we didn't understand like what kind of a technical undertaking like we were really going to be
Like
taking.
cameras, post, easy.
Yeah, we're like, oh, this will be simple. So we walked out of there and we're like, that's great. I think we finally have our idea. We're like, let's make sure. So one of the things that we had like learned in that lecture series as part of the Launchpad program was if you can get 70% of your target customers to say they would purchase your product before you actually build it, then you probably have something. So we went to I think 20 more dealerships after that, and just pitched like the product, like the idea, and they're like, oh yeah, like I think 14 or 15 of them ultimately ended up saying that they would, probably buy it. We're like, okay, cool, great. We're like, okay, well, let's not like go spend all the money, because we had won some money from that Launchpad. We put it all into that first idea that we didn't validate, right? So at this point, we don't have any money that isn't our own to build this thing. So we're like, okay, we're gonna have to figure out how to do this like as smart as possible, right? Because it's our own money.
Bootstrapping.
We're totally
Extraordinary.
bootstrapping, right? And so we're like, oh man, we can go get a GoPro from the university library for free. And then we're gonna go spend $50 at Home Depot. We're gonna get some sprinkler PVC pipe.
You can see what's happening here.
And we're going to build the structure that we can drive a car through.
But we move the GoPro.
Yeah,
around.
we only have one GoPro, so we're gonna move the GoPro to get our various camera angles that we needed to show.
Make our sales video.
And we're gonna splice it all together to make it look like it's one take.
That's funny.
And we're gonna go take it to dealerships, and we're gonna say that we already built it, and see if we can get people to sign up.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
And
people signed up.
People
it
signed
worked.
up. Yeah.
Off
Oh yeah.
of
We
that.
should have charged more, but we didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's totally awkward too, because like, great, like how quickly can you get it in? And we're like, crap, like, oh, we have a wait list.
Yeah, we're backed up.
we're pretty backed up. We'll get back to you.
That gives new meaning to the word
You're at the
scrappy.
top. You're at the top of the
Yeah,
wait list,
don't
but we
worry.
have a wait
We
list.
have a wait list.
We need more GoPros.
Yeah.
Scrappy. I love that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So again, because we're bootstrapping still, we're like, okay, how are we going to build this? And so we ended up just like, I'm a world-class Googler. You will probably never find someone at my level. Like to ask Tanner,
Yep.
I Google.
Number
What
one
does that
business
mean?
skill.
You'll find whatever you need to find on
I'll
Google?
find whatever I need. Like, it doesn't matter how obscure it is, I'll find it.
Okay.
So I found on some obscure forum, this guy that was in Vancouver who had like created a like system to basically control IP cameras. And like there was other softwares out there, right? But like we didn't want to like completely take like a finished product. We wanted something that we could kind of like mold into what we needed it to do. And like we worked an agreement with him where we would pay him and he would own the software. We'd pay him monthly for the software. And as we started to roll out like what eventually became Baywatch. And then of course, like, because Tanner and I, again, are not technical, we're not engineers, software or hardware, mechanical, that's not, we're sales guys, right? So naturally, we think we're the perfect people to create some sort of like hardware product with software, like totally should be right up our alley. And so we went to a fencing store to get some of that like vinyl fence end post that's like hollow. And then we're like, we're gonna mount cameras on that, because the concept of like steel posts and welding, like that just seemed like too hard. And we're really good with PVC pipe, right? So what's the next step from like sprinkler pipe? It's obviously fence posts, right? so we just like followed that. We got these fence posts. We mounted some cameras on there, and we, for our like first version of our product, we wanted to actually take it to dealerships so they could see it.
So it needed to be mobile.
So we couldn't just like mount it to the floor, but it needed to be, our first version was 12 feet tall and then had a crossbar, because like we were told it needed to fit like big box trucks coming through some of these dealerships. Yep. And so we're like, okay, how are we going to do that? We're like, let's get some 5-gallon Home Depot buckets and let's fill them with cement. And then let's like stick the fence post in there and let it harden. And then, so that way it's kind of stable, right? Because there's like 50 pounds of concrete. And then we'll just mount the cameras on it. And we'll take a Home Depot truck for $19 for, 45 minutes or whatever it is. We'll drive it to a dealership. We'll drop it off, and then Tanner will bring it back because we don't want to pay more than $19 to Home
Bring
Depot
the
for their
truck
truck.
back, yeah.
And while he's doing that, I'm going to by myself, like, take this 12-foot post with a 5-gallon bucket full of cement and, like, stand it up without falling on anything else in the dealership. Do the other one, then hopefully Tanner's back by the time I need to do the crossbar so we can both do it. And then we needed to plug everything in to this little server that we had, like, built that was connected to that software we had gotten from our friend in Vancouver, and that's what we did, and we did that at several dealerships.
I just love that story so much. We hear so many entrepreneurs, and I think it's unique to entrepreneurs because I think most people would just sit and stew for too long before they would ever be willing to just jump in and be like, oh, I'm going to figure this out. We're going to sell it before we ever build it.
And that's key. Like, you had people saying, I want this before it was even a thing. And
Right.
so then you're like, okay, now I got to build it. So I'm going to figure this out and with duct tape and wire, put it together.
Literally.
And then while you're putting it together, you had the wherewithal to keep the customer engaged as if you knew what you were doing the whole time so that they didn't feel like, oh, this is a hokey. What is this?
Yeah.
So it's a tribute to you guys as entrepreneurs, honestly.
Man,
Do you guys have the
incredible.
for sale sign that you stole to use for your prototype?
Well, it's so funny. Like, at our warehouse, we have, like, every iteration, like,
Oh,
from the
that's so
cement
great.
bucket, like, all the way to, like, where we are
There's
now,
a
and it's
big
so
contrast.
funny to, like, see how it changed. And, like, in some ways, I think if Tanner and I had been more technical, I think he and I both have, like, it's just natural to be the type of person where you want to make sure you have something finished to show someone.
Sure.
Especially if it's something that you have a lot of experience with and like you feel like you should only show someone a finished product. Like, I would never want to show people, like, how I sold when I first started, right? I'd be embarrassed by that. But because we had no idea what we were doing from, like, a hardware and software engineering perspective, we had no idea just how pitiful our, like, first attempt actually was. Like, now looking back, we know how it was, but at the time we were, like, very proud of it and thought it was really cool what we were doing. And it's so funny to talk to some of our first customers now, because, like, man, you guys showed up, and, like, in that moment, I really questioned, like, what we had signed up for.
Well, because we were so excited.
But because we were so excited about it, they just, like, let us put it up, and then it
Yeah.
worked how it was supposed to. And, like, that, like, not that it, like, worked perfectly, like, right off the bat, of course,
It did solve their problem.
but it solved their problem, right?
or a percentage of it.
Yeah. And so, and that's that was enough for Tanner and I to keep going, right? And that's probably, like, the thing I'm most proud of is just how Tanner and I, and that's where, like, in my own, hopefully, like, Eric Ray moment, it's like, honestly, if Tanner and I can figure out how to create this, like, integrated hardware and software product, and we can get it into 100 dealerships across the country, like, literally anyone can probably achieve anything else in a quicker amount of time than it's taken Tanner and I to figure that out.
I think there's value, though, in the process you took going from start to finish, though, because now you know every facet of your business, right?
Right.
And you've had to learn the hard way. Hey, this is what we don't do, so now you know which way to do it correctly.
Lots
and you
of
appreciate
those.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, honestly, COVID has been even more a reason why that's been the case. So Tanner and I, after we got our first couple of customers, like, we're like, okay, great, now it's time to go raise money, right? Because that's where, especially, like, in college, like, that's what, like, everyone celebrated of the companies that were coming out of, like, that Launchpad program, and then just other
Big rounds
peers.
of funding.
It's like whoever was raising money was the one who was, like, perceived to be having the most success. And obviously I'm a very competitive person, and so I was like, not to be outdone, I'm like, I'm gonna go raise some money, right? And so I do think if there was any mistake Tanner and I made at that beginning period, it's that we just raised money too fast. And we thought we needed money because we thought we needed to turn into a tech company. It's like, because Tanner and I weren't technical, we're like, okay, we need to hire somebody technical. And that person needs to be full-time because everyone needs a CTO that's full-time. Like, that's what our peers were doing. Yeah. That's what we thought we needed to do. And knowing what I know now, I think we should have just gone and bootstrapped as long as we possibly could, because I think we could have achieved a similar level of success without some of the complications that come from raising money early. But we raised money early, and we raised money from an angel, our very first investor, who was in the industry, and we had a great personal rapport with him. But professionally, his career ended up taking a shift where he wasn't able to be as involved as he thought he was going to be, and we thought. And so the whole reason why we took money from him ended up like becoming like more complicated than it was supposed to be, because he couldn't help us with it.
He was going to be an advisor kind of
figure.
And he had a lot of connections.
Ton of connections.
But then
Okay.
with a new role that he took, he wasn't able to necessarily go
Didn't have
out
the time.
on a limb to get those connections.
A time, and then just
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, a lot of conflict of
Yeah.
interest and things like that. And so, but we took the money. We hired our CTO, who's brilliant, and
We got a little salary.
we were able to start making
We're
some
like,
money.
okay, we
And
have a
so
little
I
bit of
remember
runway.
when I told my wife I was gonna like leave our old company, where I was making like over 6 figures, not even graduated from college, like very comfortable life. I told her I was going to leave to go start my own thing. It's like, yeah, I should be making about what I was making, maybe like 6-7 months. I still don't think I'm making what I was making then, which is just totally ironic. But a lot of that's obviously we're still bootstrapping, right? So to continue the story, we raised some money. We started to grow our team, right? Because that's what we thought we were supposed to do.
And this is all still pre-COVID.
This
right?
is all
Yeah,
pre-COVID.
yeah,
Yeah,
pre-COVID.
yeah. So this is, I think we took our very first money in like the beginning of 2019. And then we raised more money through, or was it 18?
2018.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that was 2018. And then into 2019, we started raising from some other angel investors. So we'd grown our team, I think, to like 15, counting me and Tanner. And so we had like a team of software engineers. Obviously, we had a physical product that needed to be installed, so we had some installers. Tanner had like a small SDR team,
salespeople,
customer
yeah.
support, office manager. We had just like gotten into like a new like warehouse like space that like we had a say in how it got built out for all of our stuff. Like we thought we were living large. We're burning money. Like I think we're burning like $45,000 a month, but like we were growing, and like we had investors that
We're
wanted,
lined up.
yeah,
Yeah.
who were lined up to continue to give us cash. So that's like taking us through 2018 into 2019. The problem with raising from angel investors is sometimes the money they think they're going to have to invest like isn't actually ready to get invested yet, because it's contingent on like other deals or real estate selling or whatever it is. And so we'd had that happen a couple of times. Super stressful. Like I lost so much like weight those like years fundraising. Like I really took a toll on me. I was putting payroll like on my credit card like multiple times just to like get between like $25,000 or
Investor A and
$50,000
Investor B.
checks and.
Yeah.
And just to like, because I knew we had money coming, but it was going to take a week to get here, but we needed payroll to go out today. And like told my wife, like, hey, put in payroll on my credit card again. And like,
I
bless
hope
her
it was a
heart.
credit card with points or flight points.
Oh
He
my
did. He got
miles
a
or
lot of
something.
miles.
I got a lot of miles.
There you go.
Yes, I did get a lot of miles.
So it's not that painful.
So benefit. But yeah, that was like a really stressful time. And so like that was through 2019, had the team, still growing, the company was growing. But we were like candidly struggling to like raise from like institutional investors. That was like the nut we couldn't quite crack. And part of that is most companies are either like a SaaS company, like software, they're a hardware company where you're selling the hardware immediately for profit, or you're like an implementation company and like you're, services kind of a thing. And we're all three of those things in one. And we had like not completely nailed our like financial model related to like, how much are we going to charge our customers? How are we going, what's our payback period? And we could show, like we had the hypothesis that once we're bolted to the floor of our customers, because the product does what it's supposed to do, it's going to be super sticky and we're not going to have any churn. But, obviously most companies have churn, right? Like that's something almost every company deals with. And so as I was pitching institutional investors, they didn't really buy this idea, whereas like we're going to have a really low churn, like 3% or less. And because we were young enough, I didn't exactly have like the data to prove it. And so we were struggling to raise institutional capital, and we had finally gotten kind of like a large family office to invest, and we were supposed to close in March of 2020. And like this was like the round where I was so excited.
We're going to go all into growth.
I was like, it's going all into
sales.
growth. Like we'll finally have like 18 months of runway for the company. like, I'm not going to have to be like on the road fundraising like every other week like I had and putting payroll on my credit card. Like, I was like, man, this is going to be so awesome. And we were thrilled. So all, everything was like committed. March came around, and then obviously like we know what happened next, right? Like COVID happened. and COVID, it's really funny. Tanner went to the dealer, someone in Seattle, like one of the very first COVID cases, had gone to a dealership that Tanner had been at that same week on a sales trip.
Dodged a bullet. It wasn't me.
It wasn't Tanner. But
who knows? There wasn't testing back then, so you could have brought it to Utah.
Tanner might be patient zero for Utah. We have no idea.
Zero. Who knows?
But obviously there was a lot of uncertainty when COVID landed in the U.S. and so understandably that investor had decided to pull back and wait it out. The problem is like I needed that money because I had like really nothing left in the bank.
High burn rate.
High burn rate. Yeah, like we had like I think 2 or 3 months worth of there, and that's if Tanner and I like completely like didn't pay ourselves a dime, and just like let Baywatch like not get reimbursed for like I think I still had like a payroll on one of my credit cards that I hadn't taken care of yet, and so that was like just devastating, like especially because this had happened, like I mentioned a couple of times before, where like an angel investor had committed capital and then wasn't able to come through, and that was difficult. But like this really was like the straw that broke my back related to like fundraising. And I just remember just like realizing the only way out of this is like we've got to like let our employees go, get ourselves to like cash flow neutral, and just try to like ride this out, because we have no idea what the next like few months or what has ultimately ended up being like over a year or two was going to be like. And so Tanner came into my office, or I went into your office, and what's so ironic is our walls were like paper thin, which really became like difficult like 2 weeks later. But like I was just like, I think the best thing to do is to just get everybody paid until they can get new jobs. Like we have the capital for that. Let's like do everything we can in our networks to get everybody placed. And then you and I are just going to go back to trying to run this thing, just the two of us full time. And so that's what we did. Like every single one of our employees got jobs before everyone like freezed their hiring, like when COVID like hit. And so we're really fortunate in that way, because no one missed paychecks.
That was cool of you guys to take the high road like that.
Yeah,
it was, and I'm glad that we did. And the cool thing is like we still have really good relationships with all those employees.
With all of them.
Yeah.
Have you hired any of them back?
So our CTO and our computer vision engineer still do work for us part time. Both of our installers have done work for us, like on a contract
bridges
basis.
Were burned, which was awesome.
Yep.
Go ahead, Jay.
March of 2020 was just such an eerie time.
So weird. The whole world shut down.
Yeah, it was just weird.
And everyone thought it was going to be like, a couple weeks, right?
Yeah,
like that's what
and
everyone said.
there was so much fear in the air. Like I remember at the gas station, and
just had no idea.
People wouldn't even dare touch the gas pumps because they didn't know if they were infected. It was just the weirdest time.
Yeah, we had no idea.
So
strange. I think it's really fascinating because you had this high of like, I can feel it in your voice where it was like you finally felt like you had this air, like you had breathing room. You could like slow down, take a breath, and you didn't have the stress. And then all of a sudden the wind was just taken out of your sails. Yeah. So like at that point, what was it that the two of you decided we're going to push through this? Like why?
It's like really kind of an interesting question. I don't know if I can really, I don't know what was going through my head.
Yeah, it was probably, we had just seen, like we believed in the product.
I think it was our customers that probably were the reason. It's like the thing that's always kept us pretty motivated has been our customers love our product. And my part of the business that I do today is like a lot of like fixing stuff that like inevitably breaks, because I have like hardware at like over 100 locations across the country. So there's, going to be something broken every other day. It feels like sometimes, right? And so that's sometimes like even today, like it's kind of a negative like energy around that and kind of gets tiresome for me. But like what has always picked me up, and I think what picked us up then was like we didn't have a single customer cancel. during COVID. Not one.
Yeah. They were canceling a bunch of other softwares or things they were using, but they weren't going to cancel Baywatch.
And
there's some validation right
and they
there.
were just like, we were like, they were so, like, our customers have just always been like such believers in the product, because it does exactly what we said it was going to do. And and because it completely de-escalates like what could be like a really like emotional situation, right? Like if your vehicle, which is like one of the, probably one of the biggest like assets or liabilities that you have, and you find that it's damaged in some way, that's going to be like an emotionally charged, kind of realization. Yeah. And so if you take those emotions and like you go, to the person who you think or the business you think caused those, like you can imagine that those get kind of like really out of hand quickly.
Lots of 4-letter words thrown
Oh,
out.
for sure.
Yeah.
And so to be
it's
able
on
to
Liar Liar.
Yeah.
You know the movie Liar Liar?
Yeah.
And he gets
With
his
Jim
car
Carrey.
towed.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yep.
right here?
Yep.
That's right.
I was already there.
Yep.
Funny.
And so that's where like being able to just completely de-escalate that with our product and say, hey, like, I understand, like, let's take a look and see like what condition your vehicle came in.
It's our fault.
Because
We'll
if it's our
take care
fault,
of it.
like we want to get it taken care of, right? And being able to like have like an undeniable record, right?
Yeah.
Of like how the vehicle came in and how it left, like totally pulls all emotion out of it. All right, you're just looking at the facts of like how did it come in and how did it leave. And that's really, I think, what kept, if I look back and try to figure out what headspace I was in, I think it was that. I think it was that our customers were such believers in the product. And even though I was struggling to understand and believe in the business
model, and
I couldn't deny the product, right?
Yeah.
We had solved the problem, and that
Yeah.
kept us in business.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So you rebuilt, you went down to ground zero again.
Yep.
And where are you at today? Give us some
Yeah, so
idea of your success.
We've like
now.
tripled since then, just
Yeah.
Tanner and myself.
Yep. And like Caleb said, we do have part-time tech help, which is
Right.
definitely
Yeah.
needed. But it's been awesome because
100 locations. I heard that number.
100 locations. We're international. We got a couple in Canada.
Yeah.
So it's a
Big
big
deal.
deal.
We really had to do some language adjustments to everything for
Currency
I don't
conversion.
know what they're
you know.
talking about, right?
That's
Love it.
funny.
Yeah, so it's been great, and we're working on a couple big deals in the pipeline with some rental car companies that have been in the pipeline a while, but
Yeah.
those move
And
slow.
because we had made
so.
some real momentum with a certain rental car
But
company.
they were hit pretty hard during COVID as
Yeah.
well.
destroyed,
And that
right? Because
kind of
we
ruined some of our traction
Yeah,
with
because
them.
that was, I mean, in 2019 in the fall, that's when we'd done this like proof of concept with a really large rental company out east, and like the feedback we got was awesome. And so that was the other thing that was like pretty demoralizing, was like we thought we were on the verge of signing like what ultimately was going to
Huge
be
deal, yeah.
a huge strategic partnership, if not potentially like an outright acquisition of like our product. And that's ultimately like, if you ask Tanner and myself, like we love working with car dealerships and we'll continue to do that. But when you ask like, where do we think our product could be like the biggest use, it's obviously rental car, right? Like that's when, like no one wants to be walking around taking pictures of their rental car vehicle at like 11:30 at night in a dimly lit
After a
garage.
20-hour flight.
After,
Yeah.
exactly. It's like
cold,
a total
it's
nightmare,
hot,
right?
Yeah.
And so that's ultimately like what we want to keep working on. And then obviously, like I said, we'd made good headway in 2019. COVID happened. Like they, their business, like I'm glad.
Stopped,
I thought
yeah.
I was stressed out. I can only imagine how they were stressed,
Yeah, for
right?
Sure.
And so they're obviously starting to build up their fleets again, and hopefully we have some traction there with a couple of companies. And so that's what we'd really like to see happen here in the future.
So here's my question for both of you. Now you've gone through this and you've gone through the highs and the lows and everything in between, right? What have you learned about each other that you didn't know before, even though you've been friends your whole life? I'm curious about that.
Yeah,
Good question.
I've only seen Tanner really pissed like one time in my life. And you want to know what it was? It's so funny. Like,
I do actually want to know.
this is like,
Now you say that.
it's hilarious. So because Tanner and I were the only ones at the company, we started doing installs, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I would fly out and do the installs, but Tanner would help me prep everything before, because Tanner was doing sales trips, so he was doing his own travel. And like one night, I'm just like done. Like I'd traveled like almost every week for like the last like 8 weeks before then. And this was like the last one. So I'm at like I got nothing left in the tank basically. And it's like 11:45 at night.
Yeah.
And Tanner had I had not been clear in where each set of cameras needed to go, and Tanner had put them on the wrong post, and I lost it. I was so mad at Tanner, and Tanner just looked at me and said, "Calm the freak down, man." And it just shocked me because I've never in my life seen Tanner that worked up before. And like a little dog, just my tail between my legs, I just turned around and went back to what I was doing. And so that's what I've learned about Tanner, is that Tanner has that in him.
Friction with us.
Yeah, Tanner, we've never fought ever.
Yeah.
And that that wasn't even a fight.
No, it wasn't a fight.
But I never thought you had it in you to have a fight. And Matt told me you do. You just have an extraordinary amount of self-control.
So Tanner, how about you? What have you learned about Caleb?
I think I've learned about Caleb that he's one of the best problem solvers I've ever met. And I think before, when we worked together with sales and things I was oh, he's a good leader, he's a great sales guy. But when you get into the weeds of building a business, there's so many problems that need to be solved. And kind of like what we said earlier, he's a world-class Googler. What that means is we don't know what we need to do, and he's out there looking and finding the information that fills in the cracks. And so that's what I've learned the most about Caleb, is if there's a problem, Caleb is on my team, we're gonna figure it out. So
It's cool.
yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to change your name in my phone from Caleb Baywatch to Caleb Googler, and then I'll know who I need to call
Honestly,
when I
that
have
might
a problem
mean
to solve.
that's more of a point of pride
Yeah,
than
I love
anything.
it.
And for
love
calming moments, I'm going to put Tanner the Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's I mentioned this at the beginning, Tanner's sales style, it's so disarming, right? I have the type of sales style where I kind of swoop in and I'm trying to be charismatic and connect. And Tanner walks in and he acts like he's known this person forever, but not in a corny way. And it's completely, it's so funny because we sell to car dealerships, right? These are the people that sell for a living.
Of the sales,
right?
They created the
Sales,
selling
yeah.
brand.
There's a whole stigma associated.
Wait, let me see if we can get this deal done. Let me go talk to my manager.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back, see if we can get a deal.
So you can understand that you can't be that type of salesperson to that type of salesperson, right? And I'd say my sales brand is more closely aligned to that type of sales style. Whereas Tanner walks in, and I don't know if it's because you should have seen him before he started growing his facial hair. He looked like he was 12.
Yeah, I looked like I was a student for the last.
Is
10
that
years,
why
yeah.
there's the facial
That's
hair
why
now?
he can get in with the student thing.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I'm
I-
The
student.
whole student
Student.
thing is making
Yeah.
sense.
I
now.
don't think it would
Got
work for
it.
me anymore.
Yep.
MBA,
Yeah.
So Tanner walks in, and you've never been yelled at a car dealership,
No, not really.
which is so crazy because it's you get yelled at all the time at a car dealership. Just like for even being a customer at a car dealership, I think you can get yelled at. Tanner's never been yelled at once, and he shows up at these car dealerships sometimes multiple times a week, right, just to talk to someone. They'll roll his eyes when they see him walking up, but they will never cuss him out because he's so disarming. So it's it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah,
Cool.
it works.
You should do a training on that sometime.
I don't know if it can be taught, honestly.
Yeah,
it's
we
just
tried. We tried
we-
to teach some of them, and it's tricky. I don't know.
you can teach selling. Tanner's a great teacher of sales technique, but just Tanner's sales style, it's I just think very few salespeople can. It's more a personality thing than it is a sales style. That's the thing, is Tanner's always been you said the highs and the lows, right? That pretty much describes me to a T. I ride high and I ride real low, and Tanner's just always
Even killed.
this. Always
great.
even killed. And so
It's a great quality to have.
oh, it's and that's why I say there are very few people who are in my personal life that I feel I could start a business with and feel it wasn't going to turn into some sort of disaster where I don't talk to that person anymore. Tanner's at the forefront of that because I know Tanner and I don't agree on a lot of things, but it's always extremely balanced. It's very cordial. Our disagreements never turn into all out fights. And it's just, I think it's more because of Tanner's personality related to being even killed, where it's I don't feel I have to yell to be heard. He hears me. And then obviously because he doesn't yell at all, I always listen to him.
Well, I met you guys 6 months ago or so, and I've been
Yeah.
super impressed with what you've done and with both of you and just all my interactions with you. So congratulations on the success so
Thanks.
far. I'm excited to see what's next.
Us too.
How do the listeners find you guys personally, and then how do they find Baywatch?
Yeah, so we're both on LinkedIn. I'm just Caleb Wagner, Tanner Beckstrand.
Tanner Beckstrand. Yeah.
Yep. Our contact information's on our website as well, I think. So baywatchtech.com. So check us out.
Yep. Cool video on there. You can check out the system,
Yeah.
see how it works. Or start paying attention at your local car dealership. You might see
Yeah.
Baywatch.
Look
as
for the
you're driving through.
Baywatch,
Yeah.
Especially
model,
in-
but
in-
camera
yeah.
system.
Yeah,
Yep.
if you're in like the New Jersey area or anywhere really in the Intermountain
Colorado,
West,
Utah,
you'll
Nevada.
see
Yeah.
our system more than likely at your car dealership.
And if you're associated with a car rental business, then you need
Yeah,
to reach out and
please.
be the
Yeah,
first one
honestly,
to adopt.
Like, give us a call because I guarantee you'll have the happiest rental customers if you put something like our system in. I don't even care if it's I want it to be our system, don't get me wrong, but like just do something better.
Someone needs to solve the problem.
Like it's so annoying. If I have to rent another car, knowing that I have a company that could solve this problem, I'm gonna go crazy. That's why I send Tanner on sales trips now. I'm just like not interested.
Well, this has been fun, you guys. What's the final tip? I mean, we've talked about a lot of helps for entrepreneurs today, but what's the one most important final tip you'd leave with our audience before we sign out?
Yeah, I think for me, when you're first trying to start a business, you really got to make sure you do the validating in the correct order, which we learned. But you take that skill and you use it throughout the cycle of the business. As you're launching new features or new products, you always got to
Do it with everything.
do it with everything. And that's a huge tip. You're going to save yourself a lot of wasted dollars and wasted time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was thinking the whole time they
That's
were
the
talking
biggest
about. We hear it
takeaway,
all the time: validate, 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 validate.
And you hear that, but a lot of people still don't do
They
it.
don't.
Let's pick up the
And-
phone, email, go talk to the people.
Yeah, even Tanner and I, like now it's like we'll just get excited about some idea that we have, and then we have to be like, oh wait, did we like validate this? Yeah, right. And
So remember the tip: I'm a student and I'm doing a project.
doing a project.
Would you
facial
pay
hair.
for this?
Shave.
shave, make yourself look as young as possible.
Caleb, how about you? Last tip.
My tip would just be have a co-founder that can like balance you out in like every way possible, or co-founders, right? I think if I had not started the business with Tanner, it either would have come to a halt on its own, or I probably would have left. Like honestly, Tanner's probably the only reason at this point I've stuck it out, because it's been really difficult. And there's been times when like I've really questioned my abilities to like go any further. And what's kept me going has been my respect and partnership with Tanner. And it's like, I can't be the one that decides to be done. It's like, Tanner's not done, I'm not done. And so that was really critical, especially during those dark COVID months, you know, and everything that happened before that with fundraising. And so just make sure you have a co-founder that you feel that way about, and can feel that way when the chips are all on the table and your back's against the wall.
Love it. Thanks, Caleb and Tanner, for joining us today on the Midnight Founders podcast. We look forward to the progress and the success you have.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you.
See ya.
Yeah.